Well, of course, Buddhism doesn't have the copyright on loving kindness and compassion. These things are human qualities, but the unique feature of Buddhist teaching is that they are taught in a group of 4 virtues, together with what we call sympathetic, joy, and also equanimity, or evenness of mind. So these 4, of these 4, the first 2, as you say, are usually spoken of the most, but in fact they are all connected. So the first one is that wish for others to be happy. And the most important feature is that it is not conditioned by whether we like the person or don't, whether they're good people, good person or bad person. So it's a general and unbiased wish for others to be happy. Compassion is like the other side of the coin. It's when we have the same unbiased general wish for all beings to be free from suffering. So if we see someone who is in pain, then usually compassion will arise first. We see them in pain and we wish them to be free of that pain. If we see someone generally not obviously in a great deal of pain, then they wish them to be happy. If we see somebody who's already very happy or very successful, then we enjoy, we appreciate their happiness. But when we feel that like we want someone to be happy, or we want them to be free from suffering, but we can't do anything. We don't have the resources, or maybe that person doesn't trust us enough to help them. Then we need the 4th quality of even mind, or what we call equanimity, and that's like a resting place. It means like you can't do anything positive, so you come back like neutral gear. And that doesn't mean you're indifferent, you don't care. It just means you recognize right now, I can't do anything, but I'm ready. If something changes, then we can try to help people be happy and to free them from suffering. So these 4 all go together. So the loving kindness, wishing people to be happy, that's a mental state, insight, but it leads to us acting to try to promote happiness. We have this feeling of compassion when we see people suffering. It's a feeling, but it leads to action to try to reduce the human suffering or the suffering of animals, creatures everywhere. But when we can't act, then we need to rest in the equanimity or upekkha. So this is the way we explain in Buddhism. Well, of course, I mean, because if we don't have the wish for others to be happy, then we wish them to be unhappy. Well, we only need to look at what the absence of those qualities would mean. If we had no wish for others to be happy, if we had no wish to help others to be free from suffering, it would be an awful world, a terrible world to live in. And the emotions of kindness and compassion, they are natural. they arise inevitably in a clear mind. So the more calm your mind is, the more that you feel these two emotions, and the more you want to act upon them. So as long as people have a clear mind or are meditating, then these qualities are going to be a part of the world, just as their opposites are a part. But when we act to make things better in the world, we often have to act in conflict with our desires and our old habits, and maybe there will be a lot of opposition from other people. And so where do you find the inspiration and the energy to stay with something and to keep doing it? It's not the logic, it's the emotion. So this is the role of the emotion. You can have a very logical reason for helping other people, but it's unlikely to be able to withstand the pressures from around you. But when you have this emotion of kindness and compassion, then it gives you a lot of energy, and you're willing to stay with it even if it's difficult. Yeah, these are not so much tools in themselves, but they are part of a way of educating your emotions. So we all have emotion. It's like an energy inside human being, and we don't want to become like robots, not like meditating. So Buddhists, we don't have any feeling. Everything is, whatever, but we want to educate the emotions so they are the positive emotion, and move away, like turn the channel away from the negative emotion towards the positive emotion. And then, as I say, when you have that positive emotion, then your wisdom and your logic, and then you start to think, well, what can I do in this situation to help somebody, or what can I do to reduce the suffering of the creatures in this situation? So the emotion is what provides the focus and the energy, but it's wisdom and intelligence that decides how to act upon those good feelings for the best result. Well, yeah, these two terms are quite difficult to translate, and I translate them as wise shame and wise fear. If we just say shame and fear in English, they don't have very good meanings. So I add wise. So it's a wise shame. So why would we call it wise shame? The meaning is that when we consider what is my responsibility as a human being, or as a Thai citizen, or as a Buddhist, or as a son, or as a father, or a husband, or whatever, then that gives you a criteria. Meaning, when you're going to act in some way, then you compare it to your ideal. What is a good human being, a good Buddhist, a good Thai citizen, a good father, or whatever. And then when you feel that these two things don't go together, these two things conflict, then a feeling arises, emotion arises. And this is what we call hiri, or wise shame. So it's a sense this is shameful, but it comes from comparing how we are going to act right now with our ideals or our principles. Yeah. And the second one is wise fear. And this comes from we consider the consequences of our actions. So usually, when you want to do something and you kind of know it's not a good thing, and then when you start to think, if I do this, it will have this consequence or that consequence, then one part of your mind says, shut up, I don't want it, don't bother me. You don't want to hear the consequences, you just want to do it. So we need to train to consider before. Yeah, I can do this and I would enjoy it, but afterwards I would feel very bad and it would affect my relationship with my loved ones, it would affect my physical health, it would affect my reputation. And so you have all these considerations and you weigh it up and you say, yeah, not worth it, because the suffering that would arise as a consequence is far more than the pleasure that would arise from the experience. So this is what we call wise fear. So it's the fear that arises when you use your intelligence to consider consequences. Wise shame is the shame you feel when you see the conflict between your action and your ideals or life principles. Well, in terms of Hiriotapa, I mean, more or less, as I've just explained, we can think of a situation where, let's say, you see some sweet over there and it's so delicious and you want to eat it. So all your body is saying, eat it, but then you think, but no, it doesn't belong to me. And then you think, if I was to eat someone's sweet and they saw their sweet had disappeared, they would suffer so much. So this is a compassion. So you think, I don't want to make someone suffer by eating their sweet. And then you may think, if I was to eat the sweet, it would be delicious, but afterwards, and then someone found out, I would be punished by the teacher, my friends would be angry with me, my parents would be disappointed in me, and so you can think of all the consequences that could arise. So if you're teaching children, you can say, you can imagine there's a sweet there and it's so delicious. What do you think you should eat it if it belonged to someone else? And does it matter? Someone would say, never mind, they won't mind. But then someone else say, no, it belonged to someone else. And you can ask, would any other bad thing happen if you eat that sweet? And the children can come up with the answers themselves. Yeah, teacher would be angry, friends would be angry, parents would be disappointed, nobody would trust me anymore. And so it's more getting the children to come up with the answer themselves. Well, one thing is that you make things a goal. You talk about them, you praise them, because children are always listening to what the grown-up praise and like, and they want to do those things and be like that. So just making this important goal of the education is like in Tosi school. We have these principles of the school principles of the Buddhist school children, and one of them is having this loving kindness and compassion. So it's like one of the goals of the education. The other thing is that the teachers and parents have to model this behavior, kind behavior. So children can see it's not just you telling them they should be kind, you're kind. That's why you teach it. And then when you give children the opportunity to be kind, then you praise the children, and then you ask them, how does it feel, when you're kind to someone? And they can say, yeah, it feels good. You say, well, yeah, remember how good it feels when you're kind to someone. Because when you see that in yourself, yeah, when I'm kind to someone, it really feels good. You want to do it some more. Yeah. So you can just use everyday examples of people helping each other, being kind, doing good things for each other, and seeing this is part of education, learning how to live in society in a good way. Well, if you have, if you're a kind and compassionate person, you tend to have a lot of friends because it's very attractive and people like to be around kind and compassionate people. For yourself, you feel happy. Kind, compassionate people are happy people. But as I said, you cannot just take one or two good qualities out of the whole training or education. For instance, if you are kind and compassionate, you also have to be quite strong. It doesn't mean you just do what anybody wants you to do to make them happy. Like if a child always wants some sweet thing, if you're a parent, you love your child, doesn't mean you give them every sweet thing to eat because their teeth would go rotten. So you have a wisdom to say, sometime, yeah, this might make you happy short term, but is make you unhappy in the long term. So the question is, what does it mean anyway to be happy? If you can give someone some pleasure, but maybe it doesn't make them happy. Or if you want people to be happy, what does that mean? Ultimately, it means the happiness of being free from suffering, free from defilement, free from anger and greed and foolishness, not just some kind of quick burst of pleasure. Well, these are not specifically Buddhist terms, like say mindfulness practices or the three characteristics. These are qualities that people in every religion could understand. But the difference in Buddhism is they are included in a system of training. It's not just that they're praised or say you should be kind, you should be compassionate, but we have a training of education of body, speech and mind in order to develop these qualities. If everybody was kind and compassionate, then there probably wouldn't be all these conflicts. But the truth is that they're not. So how can you make people who are not kind and compassionate become kind and compassionate? That's very difficult. People have to want to change. Now in many religions, people are encouraged to be kind and compassionate, but only for those people in their own religion, not for people of other religions. So then the kindness and compassion is not a really positive force in the big picture. But in Buddhism, then we teach the kindness and compassion for all beings, whether or not they are Buddhists or whatever religion where they profess. But to solve social problems, there are so many different approaches needed altogether, and promoting kindness and compassion is one thing to do, but it's not the only thing. Well, it's a big question. I think most simply I can say that Buddhism is like a different family of religions. It is a religion that doesn't emphasize faith in the same way. And Buddhism is an education system. It is a training of human behavior, human mind, and of wisdom. So it's not something to believe in, but we take the teachings of the Buddha and put them to the test in our life to see whether or not they work. So the Buddha said, don't just believe something because it's the word of the Buddha, but take it away and practice it and see whether or not it has a good effect. All human beings want to feel safe. And without the feeling of safety, there can be no culture, no development, no progress. So how do we create the society or the community or even the family where everybody feels safe? And the Buddhist answer is, you make a commitment to keep 5 precepts. This is basic. Meaning, even if you still get angry sometime and aggressive, you make a promise to everyone around you that I will not abuse you physically or verbally. Even if you still have the desire, you can say, don't worry, I will never steal anything that belongs to you. If you have a relationship, you tell your husband or your wife, you can relax. I would never do anything behind your back or ever have an affair or commit adultery. You tell people, I would never lie to you. I would never drink or take drugs which affect my judgment. So when somebody takes the 5 precepts, you can relax, you can feel safe. This person is not going to hurt you or steal from you or cheat on you or lie to you. So it's a way of creating the healthy family, healthy society. Well, you can say, yeah, I will be kind and compassionate, but then when you get angry, maybe you hit somebody and say, oh, I'm sorry, in future I will be kind and compassionate. No, you have to have some bottom line. And the 5 precepts are bottom line. Otherwise, kindness and compassion doesn't mean anything. If you're still going to hurt or to steal or commit adultery or lie or drink and take drugs. Well, the teachings of the Buddha are not Asian teachings. It's not just for one group of people. It's for human beings everywhere. And whatever a Thai person can understand, an American person can understand. It's more the interest and the commitment to learning. But you can explain Buddhist teachings in Thai or English or Hindi or Chinese or whatever language you want. It's a universal teaching, universal religion. Well, as part of our education of our whole life as human being in the world, one thing we need to educate is our emotions. And what we do is we don't just repress emotion, but we try to channel the energy of emotion into the positive qualities. And the positive emotions are loving kindness, compassion, and appreciation of goodness and happiness of others, and also evenness of mind. These 4 are a group. But we, as a meditation every day, we can practice sending thoughts of loving kindness to those around us, to all the beings in our home, our village, our town, our city, our country, the whole world. So we learn to think about other people in a new way. And when we see people suffering or creatures suffering, then we generate the wish for them to be free from suffering. Or we can even meditate in a way of imagining all the people and all the creatures who are suffering in the world right now, and generate strong wish that they could be free from suffering. So these are ways of purifying our mind and creating the positive emotion. And when the positive emotion is strong, it leads us to act upon those emotions, act in ways to promote happiness and to relieve suffering.